What is going on, guys? Eric from Bolts and Banter here, coming at you from the future, and we are going to be working on the Cheapie Civic once again today. We already have the coilovers installed, but I forgot to shoot an intro to this video. So in this video today, we are going to be installing the Maxpeedingrods T6 coilovers. We're going to unbox them, we're going to set them up, we're going to put them on this car, and then we are going to show you guys driving impressions with the stock suspension, and then afterwards with the T6 coilovers installed. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and check us out on Instagram at Bolts and Banter for more daily car content. Without further ado, let's get straight into what it's like driving the Civic bone stock. So let's just do a quick little test with the stock suspension. Again, this has 60,000 miles on it, never been modified. We have some railroad tracks coming up. There's a little squeak in the back. I think those are the trailing arm bushings that definitely need replacing. So we're gonna address those once we're done with the coilover install. But yeah, the suspension is really boaty. There's a lot of dipping in the corners and you don't even have to really move the wheel that aggressively to feel that. So we're just gonna quickly go on this off ramp over here and see what the stock shocks do on a bumpy road as well as a small little twisty. All right, so let's deliberately go over these bumps because this road here is terrible. That portion's worse than the other side. A lot of nosedive when we go into brake, so hopefully the new coilovers will have less of that. And like you guys saw, there is a lot of swaying from side to side. These shocks are super soft and I do think they're a bit worn out. All right, let's get these coilovers unboxed. Okay, honest review. I have actually seen some videos about this recently, how there's oil in the bag for the coilovers, and I thought that Maxpeedingrods has fixed that issue. It looks like it hasn't been fixed. So we're gonna have to talk to the folks at Maxpeedingrods about this. We can't put these on the car with that leaking that much fluid. It's quite a lot, actually. Okay, so upon further inspection, it's looking like one of the rear shocks either got damaged in shipping or something along those lines. The fluid has leaked out everywhere. Actually, the fluid, there's some oil inside here. That might be deliberate. There is oil inside here. Could possibly also be deliberate. But this is the shock in question. It's the rear one, and it's definitely leaking. You guys can see that on the box right there, and right here, it's most definitely leaking. So we're not going to be able to install this. If we do, it's not going to be an accurate representation of these MXP coilovers. So we could install the fronts today. I don't think we're going to go ahead and do that, but let's just wait and see what MXP says, and then we'll go ahead and finish the install in another video. All right, so it is about a week later. Maxpeedingrods and every company in China took a week off for Chinese New Year, but we were able to speak with the team at Maxpeedingrods and they sent us a replacement shock. So originally when we unboxed it, this was the leaking shock and the entire bag was full of oil. So a lot of you guys will mention that the Maxpeedingrods come with oil when you open the box, and while that is true, some oil or a thin film of oil is used to protect it from corrosion during shipping. That was not the case with this one. This is how much oil leaked out. If you have a box that has this much oil leaking out of it, you definitely need to contact the guys over at Maxpeedingrods. This is too much. If there's a little bit of residual, just like this, then that's fine. That's the oil that came on the shock during production, but again, that was definitely leaking. You can even see the dribbles here inside the bag. Again, they were super helpful sending over a replacement shock. They just sent this one over, so we had to take apart the rear coilover and put it in. Very simple to do by hand with hand tools, so not an issue. But anyway, here are the T6 coilovers that we are going to install onto the Cheapie Civic. So before we put these coilovers in, I just have a couple of notes to go over. These are, again, the SP1 T6 or COT6 coilovers. These are an upgrade from the original Maxpeedingrods coilovers that you guys saw, and right now at the time of filming they are going for about $375 with the discount code. So check out the link in the description below if you are interested in getting a set of these. Now, I spoke with Maxpeedingrods and they recommended these T6 coilovers over their T7 simply because I am using the Cheapie Civic mostly for daily driving around the rough roads of NYC. We're not going to be taking this on the track, so I think these are a better fit for the car, and they are a little cheaper than the T7 as well. Just a couple of technical specs. It has a pillow top ball mount for the fronts, although if I'm honest, I don't think that that's going to make a difference for our application. It also has adjustable dampening with 24 levels available for all 4 shocks via that little adjustment knob on the top. It has independent adjustment for height, so we can set the preload separate from the height, and off camera we actually did that when we replaced the shock, so each of these shocks now have about 5 mm of preload. So the spring rates for these are in the front 8K and in the rear 5K. The construction of these definitely looks beefier than the old Maxpeedingrods coilovers, and that would make sense. These do come at a slightly higher price. The welds are okay, but I don't think that these are going to break off. The construction of the cups themselves, though, do look to be a little better than the old ones, and the finish is definitely more expensive or higher end than the painted yellow orange paint that they use. This is more of a textured type of powder coating. Again, for fitment, these will fit anywhere from 1988 to 2000 model Civics. They come with the spacers over here. They also come with brackets for the brake lines and the adjustment wrenches that we used earlier to set the preload. Comes with a nice little emblem here and an instruction manual. I highly recommend you read these if you are new to installing coilovers. If you don't like reading paper, they have the digital version online. Anyway, enough talking, let's get to work. All right, guys, so we're gonna take a couple of measurements. The first one being the hand test, and we're looking at a fist gap in the front, and I'm gonna presume we're looking at a fist gap in the rear. Oh yeah, that's a little more than a fist. So we're actually aiming for a 3-finger gap, and we're looking at about 24.5 inches in the front and 25.5 in the rear. Okay, so from the top of the top hat to the bottom, 16, and here is 15. We're gonna test to see where the fork sits, and then we are going to only lower about 1 inch to start. Another helpful tip, guys, is the Maxpeedingrods coilovers actually come with this little lip here. And if you read the directions, you have to have 30 millimeters of thread in order for you to safely use these coilovers. So that means that this cup has to be above the lip. We are only lowering about 1 inch, so this is well within spec. All right, to the car we go. Alright, so just a couple install notes. These nuts that Maxpeedingrods gives with the coilovers are not a standard Honda size. They're 15 mm, not a big deal. I also found out that to use these on an EG, the spacer should go on to the shock instead of the fork, otherwise you're gonna have a really hard time doing that. And it helps to use a jack to get this centered in, and a helping hand is always useful when we're installing these. So this side fit in a lot easier than the other side. Nice little slip fit, no issues. The other side we had to use a jack. I think it was just a little clearance issue with the spacer. And another installation tip, or depending on your preference, anti-seize on all of the bolts. We live in the Northeast, so it's necessary. OCD has arrived, and the nut for the bracket for the brake line is not in the right position, so we have to unscrew it and redo it again. Okay, I will admit mid-installation that the most difficult part of installing these coilovers is actually the brake line brackets, but we're dealing with some rusty bolts and the brackets are not perfect, if I'm honest. Minor thing. It's a lot better than running zip ties, but if there's anything that Maxpeedingrods could improve, it's making the bracket a little bit less cumbersome. I think if you live on the West Coast, you probably won't have any issues like we're having with the rust and whatnot. If you're new to installing coilovers, what I've found is it's best to keep the bracket loose first, tighten up the bolts for the brake line, and then tighten the Allen head for the bracket. And because there are a million tips about installing coilovers, especially on a Civic EG, we're not going to do a step-by-step, but another tip is to make sure to jack up the suspension without any of the bolts tightened down, and then tighten the bolts down to make sure the bushings are preloaded. All right, that's the front done. Let's go ahead and do the rear. We gotta wait for the shocks to settle a bit. So we are going to remove the rear coils, but it's a perfect time to inspect the bushings, and you guys can see that. Next up this summer, trailing arm bushings for the Cheapie Civic. So that's 19.5. Let's shoot for 18.5 in the rear. Lower it. Yeah, it's good. right, so here's what we're looking at initially. It's about 24 in the rear, also 24 in the front. Looks a little higher in the front, so we have some fine tuning to do, but so far it looks good just at first sight. We're gonna pack up the tools and take this car for a little test drive. Everything right now is on full stiff, so we're gonna see if we need to make it any softer. So enough talking, and let's go for a drive. So you're saying that the coilovers are too firm right now? Okay, so because they're at full firm, let's change it to the middle.
The height is okay na.
The height is fine.
Ang ano na lang, firmness na lang.
Yeah, we just got to do that. So it's a little bit of tweaking. All right, so we just took it on a ride and full stiff on the front and the rear. We're gonna move the fronts to the middle setting and see if that makes it a little more bearable on the street. So this is all the way, so that would be 24 clicks that way. We're gonna count 12 to the other way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right, let's see how that drives. And since the rear is a little too stiff, let's go back 6 clicks in the rear. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the rear will still be firmer than the front. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, let's give that a try. All right, guys, so we are gonna go on some bumpy roads right now, take it around the city to show you what it feels like to daily drive these Maxpeedingrods T6 coilovers and if they are worth it for your daily driver. I have the suspension set to 10 clicks in the front and 14 clicks in the rear, having the rear a little bit more stiff than the front, and the suspension rebound has been very, very comfortable for daily use. It is rough on rough bumps as to be expected, but not any more rough than the stock suspension. Stock suspension would still make very bad noises over crazy potholes, so I am not surprised that these make the same type of noise. We have it lowered about 1.5 inches in the front and about 1 inch in the rear. Not too low. I know that these coilovers can go a little lower. They can't slam the car, but I do think that this is a good height for daily driving around the big city. So far, so good. No adverse noises, no other issues. Again, the only issue that we had was that leaking coilover out of the box that was damaged in shipping. I think the top of the coilover got bumped where the adjustment knob is and caused the seals to leak. After they sent us a replacement shock and we put that on in a couple minutes, everything is fine and there was no issues installing these coilovers at all. I'm really happy with them and I'm going to give them more testing and more daily use. I'm going to try and drive 10,000 miles on New York City streets with these coilovers to see what they have in terms of durability. I think that the streets of New York are pretty rough and pretty unforgiving, so that would be a good testament to see whether or not these MXP coilovers are good for a daily driver. In the past, I've had very expensive coilovers on my car. I've had a set of Tane CST coilovers that had the EDFC remote dampening in the dashboard, and those actually didn't last very long on New York City streets. A couple of potholes later, one of the shocks blew and that was the end of that. It cost quite a lot of money to get them rebuilt, and I took them off the car and went to a different suspension setup. So for these coilovers particularly, I think for the price, about anywhere from $375 to $425, depending on if Maxpeedingrods has a sale, and depending if you use my coupon code in the link below. I think these are a good deal. I think the comparables would be True Hearts or Rev 9 coilovers, or potentially on the higher end of the scale, we're looking at Function Form Type 1s, which don't have adjustable dampening, and they are not a full body coilover, and they don't have the plastic coated threads, which means that if you live in the Northeast like me, you can only expect your coilovers to last a couple of seasons until they are seized and you aren't able to adjust them. On top of that, because they don't have adjustable dampening, you're not really sure what you're going to get out of the box in terms of ride quality. So as firm and as stiff as they are is what you're going to have to live with. So I think if you are on a budget like I am for the Cheapie Civic, I think these are definitely a coilover you should try out. I haven't tried any of the other Maxpeedingrods coilovers, but I have seen the old style in person, and I can tell you that these T6 coilovers are definitely more robust and better designed than the old ones. So at the very least, you should give them a look and consider them for your project. Anyway, we are going to cut to the beauty shots, as that does it for this video. If you guys are interested in seeing more suspension work done to the Cheapie Civic, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe to this channel, and check us out on Instagram at Bolts and Banter as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and see you in the next one.